Welcome to this free mandolin lesson for beginner and intermediate players on how to play the lovely Bluegrass standard session tune, The Banks of the Ohio. It's quite a gruesome tale of unrequited love and then murder, but it doesn't take away that it's a beautiful melody to play. Before we start playing anything, I'd like to just sort of demonstrate what we're going to do. We're going to start with our basic melody, which sounds a bit like this. And then over the course of 10-15 minutes or so, we're going to slowly add complexity. We're going to add double stops, we're going to add tremolo, and we're going to do a bit of improvising and hopefully have a melody that sounds something like this. I should say that everything we talk about in this lesson is included on a free PDF, which is linked below. So make sure you download that so you can have the tab or music in front of you at all points and you don't have to learn any of this by ear. So before we can do anything, we need to know the core melody. So let's have a little play through it. And at this point, make sure you have the tab and music in front of you. And the core melody, which we will just play, I'm just going to dive straight in and we'll play through it once. I'm going to put the metronome on so you can hear that. This is after 3, 4, 1. 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. 3, 4, 1, 2. 3, 4, 1, 2. 3, 4, 1, 2. 3, 4, 1. So that is our starting point. We all need to know that core melody, even though there's a lot of gaps in there that we're going to fill in a minute. And the other essential thing we need to know is our scales and arpeggios. They're very useful, even if you're not going to do any of the improvising for this. Scales and arpeggios, always good to know. So first of all, the G scale. We're in the key of G, so we need to know our G scale. That should be ingrained in your eyelids. When you shut your eyes at night, you should be able to see the notes of that G scale. It will help you in so many ways with your mandolin playing, so please do take the time to have that quickly under the fingers. The next thing is our arpeggios. So this is in the key of G, and we would expect, and if you look at the tune on the PDF, we do use the G chord, the C chord, the D chord, and we also use the D7 chord in this tune. If you didn't want to do this D7, you could just play D instead. So there's 4 arpeggios there that are useful to know. And again, I've written them on the PDF. So the G. So it's just G, B, D, G, B, D over and over again. G, B, D, G, B, D, G. And then the C, which is C, E, and G. And then the D, which is D, F sharp, and A. And then for you intermediate players, the D7, which adds the C natural to that. So those are our 4 arpeggios. Before we can start adding double stops or tremolos or improvising, you need to have a good grasp of those. So I really highly suggest you pause this video and just make sure you're comfortable playing them, because any additions I'm going to make to the melody are going to be using those as our foundation point. So if you do know those arpeggios and scales, it really does help. So now let's add some tremolo to our melody. If you are new to tremoloing, I'm not going to talk about it in full. I will link the video that I have done on tremolo. All I will say is stay relaxed and move your hand as fast as possible and you'll have something close to tremolo. And you can add it on as many notes as you want. You could do, if we take phrase 1, you could do the whole thing. You could do the whole thing as tremolo. Or alternative, you could just do the long notes. I think, personally, I prefer the second option. I like just tremoloing on the longer notes, but there are some amazing mandolin players. David Grisman, as I will talk about in the advanced video, is a really good exponent of tremoloing on all the notes. So now let's play the melody again, and you add tremolo wherever you want. I'm just going to add it on the long notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 2. Slightly more complicated to add to the melody are double stops. And again, a lot of people think double stops are some mystical, people always say, how do I do double stops? How do I play double stops? And I always answer is, know your arpeggios. So if we take the first phrase, so that first melody note, the first flagship melody note, that one, the B note. So that's a B. Second fret of the A string is a B. And if you look on the music, there's a G chord being played at the current time. So to make a double stop, what we need is one of the other notes from the current chord being played. So current chord is a G chord, we're playing a B. A G chord is G, B and D. So the B is being taken up by the melody, so we can add a G or we can add a D and we'll get a nice double stop. And we actually have 4 options for doing that. We have a D there, we have a G there, we have a D there, and we have a G there. So double stop number 1 with the open string. Double stop number 2 with the G. And then double stop number 3 where we need to do a little position shift. With now the melody's here and the double stop here. Or finally, all 4 of those are perfectly valid double stops. There's none of those are more right or more wrong than others. It's all personal preference and what you feel comfortable playing. And if you were to say, I'm going to double stop every long note in this melody, there are 8 long notes. And if each long note has 4 different options at least, you can quite quickly see there are hundreds of different ways of playing this, all as valid as each other. So what I do suggest, if you're an intermediate player, just have a quick pause of this video and go through and add double stops in those long notes using the theory. So when it changes to a D chord, you now need to use the D arpeggio. D7, you've got the extra note of the C. And obviously C arpeggio, C, E and G. For what it's worth, if you're not sure what you're doing, I have given you an example and we will play through that now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You may have noticed when you play those double stops, the mandolin is not necessarily built to ring out for very long. Especially when there's other musicians, those notes get drowned out very quickly. So we need to fill a gap. Unlike a fiddle player who can just hold their bow going to keep the note ringing, we can't do that. We have two options. The first is to combine what we did earlier in this lesson, is to tremolo. Now, tremolo in double stops is hard because you have to hit two strings accurately. So you can do that. Nothing wrong with that. The other option is to fill the gap with eighth notes or quavers. So you essentially just lightly keep your right hand moving. So that fills the gap. It doesn't change the melody because although we're adding notes, it's still the same note, it's still the same melody notes. It's sort of tricking the ear into thinking that the note is ringing on longer. And again, both very valid options, and you could even switch between the two during the two solos. We won't play through it again now, we'll move on, but just something to keep in mind when we reach our final version of this tune. The final part of embellishing the melody to the banks of the Ohio is adding some sort of improvised notes around the not so important melody notes. So I think that all of the long notes are quite important. We don't really want to mess around with them. We're just going to double stop or tremolo them. But we do have some sort of passing notes or passing phrases that we could tinker with without affecting the melody too much. So for example, in bar 2, that da 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 da, we could do it. We could tinker with those because as long as we start and end on the same note, I don't think it affects it too much. Now to do that, that's where the scale comes in useful. The arpeggio really helps when you're doing double stops, but the scale really helps at this point when we're doing little passing phrases, because the scale is sort of every note that will sound okay in G. So I have written an example, and just to very quickly show you some of the phrases that I have changed. So I've got double stops filling in the gap. I've just added one extra eighth note in that first one. Tremolo in that one, and here's a main phrase. So instead of just quarter notes, I've filled in some extra notes there, carrying on. And then here. So I'm not massively changing the melody, I'm just tinkering with the passing phrases. So that is my version. What we're going to do now, for intermediate players, I suggest you pause this video, write your own arrangement of the Banks of the Ohio, and then carry on this video, because I'm going to play that melody. I'm going to play it once through, with the mandolin playing the tune, and then the second time through it's just going to be some chords. Mandolin and guitar will both play chords, and so the second time through you can have a go at either playing my version of the melody again, or you can have a go at playing your own version. And what I want you to take away from this video is that once you know the core melody, you know the arpeggios, you know the scale, there is really no wrong way of doing this, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You can add notes, you can do double stops, you can do tremolo, all the options are on the table for you, and it's one of my favourite parts of playing the mandolin, or playing music in general, is the freedom we have once we can sort of take ourselves away from the core melody and start adding our own version in improvising. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed the last 15 minutes or so and take a few tips away. Please do hit subscribe while you're here. It would be much appreciated. And all previous free lessons are available over at mandomike.com.